Parliament has requested a 6-month extension from the Constitutional Court to finalise the amendment to the Electoral Act in 2020. The Apex Court ruled that the Electoral Act was unconstitutional for requiring citizens to belong to a political party in order to be elected to the National Assembly. Parliament was given 2 years. This time frame expires in June to make the necessary amendments to the Act. For more on this, we're joined by My Vote Counts electoral systems researcher Letlhogonolo Letshele. Good evening, Letlhogonolo. Thanks for your time. Look, there've been big questions around the commitment of Parliament to, number one, meet the deadlines that have been set by the Constitutional Court, but number two, to also really effect amendments and changes to the Electoral Act that are in the spirit of what the court has wanted them to do.
Good evening, Kathy, and good evening to the viewers at home. Quite a mammoth task was, ahead of the Parliament to just make sure that they reform the electoral process to be in accordance with the Concord judgment. Where we're sitting here today is Parliament has decided that they have not been given enough time to carry the process, so they still need time to deliberate on the bill and ensure that meaningful participation, was given for the process, and hence we are here.
There was a committee of individuals that had been set up by Parliament to help look into, the possible scenarios of what the changes to the Electoral Act could be. Do we know what has come out of that?
You could say those are actually one of the delays, in the process, because the minister created the committee comprising of, some of the academics and experts who know much more, around creating an electoral system. So what happened was the committee engaged with stakeholders like our civil society, just to get the options of what electoral system we think is best, to strengthen democracy. So the committee compiled a report with 2 options that they deemed was best in order to change the electoral system. There was a minority report and a majority report. So the minister was giving the report around June 2021, but only in January this year, 2022, did the minister table the report before Parliament, leaving only 5 months before the deadline, which is June the 10th.
Of course, that's part of the difficulties, right, that these delays did not necessarily have to be there. In the end, this is going to have big implications for the vote that is set to take place in 2024.
Absolutely. We're sitting in quite precarious times because we really don't know whether the Concord will grant the extension as per the request of Parliament. Should the extension be granted, it's highly likely that the system might not be ready for 2024 because, there's quite a lot of challenges that, the process still needs to overcome. Judging from the consultations that were held around March, Parliament went across the country, speaking to people about this, but you could get a sense that even political parties themselves really do not quite understand, the magnitude of the process, do not understand the electoral system that's actually tabled before them, and hence the information has not been cascaded to the constituencies. So when Parliament was engaging with people on the ground, they do not really have a grasp, of the mammoth changes that are going to happen. Also, stakeholders like yourself, the media, civil society, even ordinary people still don't know, the impact of a change in the electoral system. This change is quite big. It changes the way votes are determined. It changes how, seats are determined in Parliament. So it's quite big, and people still do not know about it. And there's also big operational challenges. The IC did flag that it requires 2 years, to kind of implement these changes. So it was supposed to be complete by June, so that the IC has 2 years to complete. So if Parliament, request this extension and is granted, it's into the time that the IC needs to implement the change. So it's possible that it might not be ready, and then we might just use their current system. So those are one of the biggest impact of the delay of the process.
There would be a lot at stake, not just for the electorate, but also for political parties and individuals that could well be eyeing contesting the 2024 elections. Do you foresee a situation where we have further challenges brought to the court over the inability of Parliament to meet this deadline, given the ramifications of what that could be?
I think it's quite possible. There's actually even critics currently tabled, against the current bill. Some people are dissatisfied with how it looks like, saying that it gives power to political parties, how it's set up. So we do anticipate litigation, especially if Parliament is going this route of requesting an extension, because a lot is at stake. Obviously the proposed bill. Independent candidates are going to contest 50% of the seats. So, for instance, with the National Assembly, there's 400 seats. So, independent candidates can contest 200 seats with the new system. So, I mean, it's quite a big change in the sense that now people will be able to vote for political parties and independent candidates to represent them at National Assembly and provincial legislature. So we also did see during the 2021 local government election, there's quite a shift towards, vying around independent candidates. So people really are hoping that happens. So I think those will be one of the motivations for people to litigate, against this, because I mean, the Concord really did give granting for the system to be changed. So, and to be changed in favor of independent candidates being a part of it. So it's something that's, really important at the moment.
As my vote counts, what are you most concerned about currently in terms of the process?
Most importantly was meeting the deadline, because, we've been monitoring the process quite closely, and we did anticipate that there might be issues of a deadline. And here we are sitting with Parliament wanting to request a deadline. And also one of the biggest issues was around public awareness and meaningful participation. As I mentioned earlier, when we were monitoring the public consultations on the ground, we did get a sense that people do not fully comprehend the system that's tabled before them, and also political parties as well. So there are those issues that are competing. So we need to really, critically examine the reasons behind Parliament's, wanting to request the extension, if whether the reasons are legitimate. I mean, if Parliament, like it says now, that its reasons for requesting extension is to, ensure that there is, a diversity of views, to ensure that meaningful participation happens. So I think it might be legitimate that it's granted, so that the process can be, democratic in all its sense.
All right, let's leave it there for tonight. Letlhogonolo Letshele, she is with My Vote Counts, the electoral systems researcher there.